It's 5:01, so let me go ahead and get started. Good evening, everyone, if you're on the East Coast, and good afternoon if you're on the West Coast. And I don't even know what time frame is it's called in the Midwest and the Mountain. It's great to see you. My name is Hassan Musavi, and I'm with University. And I, with Dr. Evan Bingham, actually we co-chair the educational committee with ASC, and we're having this workshop slash discussion session to speak about online education, right? A hot topic, something that I'm pretty sure all of us in some capacity would have to or have had dealt with it. So without further ado, let me kind of state a few housekeeping items, give you an introduction of the topic, and then open it up for discussion. And I'm sorry, I have to at the same time keep admitting folks to the meeting. So I kind of have to look at two screens. Hopefully I won't have to do it at the same time. But one thing is that please, and I see that everyone is doing it, please keep your mics off and please unmute yourself when you want to speak. It's really helpful if you did it that way. You're most welcome to turn on your camera or your cameras if you feel like it. Um, I am making a recording of this session, and the sole purpose of making this recording is actually to document our discussions and find uh, future steps, right? So hopefully I have your consent to do that. I just wanted to um, bring it up to your attention. Um, this is an open discussion, right? So honestly, at the end of the day, this is us in a virtual environment, just talking together, speaking about our experience, our opinion, comments, and so forth around the topic of online education. So absolutely, I want all of us to speak up, to talk about their experience and so forth, which basically means that when we're leaving a comment and would like to share our experience, I'd ask you please to be concise. That will allow us, everyone, to join the discussion. I will actually keep time because our time is about 60 to 90 minutes. It's a 90-minute session and we have 6 topics to cover. So it's about 15 minutes each. So I'm going to keep time and make sure that we are on time and we cover every major topic that we are going to discuss. So with that said, another thing I was going to ask you is that when you're prompt to speak, please state your name and affiliation. This actually helps a lot with the Zoom audio transcript thingy. And we know who has actually stated what is going to be really helpful in the future, especially if you want to document all that. Let me see if I'm not missing anything. Okay, it seems like that this is all as far as housekeeping items. A very, very brief introduction, if I may, and then I'll open it to discussion. Basically, before COVID and for our ASC routine conferences, the one that we had to basically go to Liverpool for the education committee and ASC, in a big picture, have decided to have workshops, right? Workshops, you guys remember these workshops from the past, estimating workshops, scheduling workshops, and so forth. Now, after having a few ideas back and forth, we decided that this time we may actually want to do something a little different. And instead of having workshops revolve around topics that we teach, why not having workshops that are going to target newer approaches, right? For example, online learning and things of the like. So we kind of had this on our radar. right before this COVID pandemic. And then you probably know the rest of that story, right? Then COVID hits, everyone now would have to do online teaching at some capacity. And not everyone is signed up for it, which is another layer of interesting challenges that many of us and our students actually would have to go through. So at the end of the day, at the educational committee, we kind of thought that it's about time for us to chime in and see and collect those experiences, those opinions and comments. What's the best approach? What can we do to be more effective in an environment like this? What's the path to future and things like that? So with that said, this was kind of our behind the curtain discussions that we had. And then we decided to have it, to basically have this conversation and talk about it. Our big topics are the following. Let me invite two more folks to the meeting. Sorry about that. Um, so so these are the topics that we're going to cover. One, technology. So what's the role of technology for online teaching? How are we going to use technology? How are we going to use technology differently, right? And when I say technology, well, I guess purposefully I say it in a very loosely manner. I mean software packages, hard technology that we can use, so forth and so on. And I'm sure that you guys have a lot of experience working on different aspects of things like this. Then the second item is engagement. How do we actually incentivize students to remain engaged during an online session? How do we actually go about evaluation? Are traditional tests still a correct or positive approach? If you have labs and hands-on session, how do we actually go about them? So these are the kind of topics that we want to talk about. There's a lot of discussions about synchronous, asynchronous sessions, what the best practice for online teaching and education. We would like to cover that as well. So these are the basic main six topics that we'd like to discuss. And with that said, I'm actually going to start with the first one and kind of I'll lay out the foundation, and I'll promise you guys I'm going to remain silent and let you guys share your experience. Um, Technology and software, web-based platforms. How do we use them? How do we utilize that technology to be more effective when it comes to teaching? What have you guys done differently than before? Is there any technology? Is there any software? Is there any online platform? Is there anything about Zoom that you use and it's innovative and that's something that you'd like to share with us? So we basically can take advantage of that experience semesters to come, or maybe for the remainder of this semester slash quarter. So that's our first topic. I'm all ears. Dr. Gunderson, please go ahead.
Uh, Thank you very much. I was really concerned about the engagement portion of working with these students. And in the past, when we were face to face, I noticed, especially the juniors and seniors, were not focused in class. You could tell they were still focused on their internships because they're so engaged in their internships. They're given a ton of responsibility, just like any other project engineer. And they've had a tough time settling back into school or even thinking school has any importance whatsoever compared to the work they were doing and getting paid for. So I ended up developing an assignment that was really basically free points. I'm not grading it tough, but it was a requirement to put together a 5-minute PowerPoint presentation. I want to see a cover sheet with their picture, just a headshot picture, so I know what connect a name with a face. Then I want a synopsis with pictures of what they did this summer. And then I want to know what their goals, personal and professional goals, are in the short term and long term are. And then I met with students. They signed up. I would even have them do it on Saturday or whatever fit their schedule. I had a lot of options when I could meet. I'd meet with 3 students at a time. I did this for both my seniors in scheduling and my juniors in project delivery. And I got incredibly positive feedback. It helped them make the transition from working to school. They liked talking about what they've done. They're proud of what they've done and they really liked telling me about it. They liked listening to what their peers had done because they had different experiences, so they were able to share, at least amongst the three of them. I made a half-hour block, so that was 15 minutes for those three presentations and 15 minutes for Q&A, where I just, shoot the breeze with them a little bit and get a little deeper. It really set a positive tone for the semester, and I think the semester's gone well, much to the result of setting that up initially. So when we go back to face, I'm definitely going to do it again because it was that effective.
David, this is Mike Jackson at Clemson. I just echoing what you just said. We had the same experience, and just to let you know, I tried it back when we were live, and I tried to have the students make a brief presentation of that nature in the classroom, and that did not work so well because the other students felt like we were wasting their time. But as soon as we went online and that conversation was more between the students and me through Zoom, it's really been received very well. So I would caution you about when you're live, the other students sitting in the classroom watching presentations from their peers about their internships. That did not fly at Clemson anyway.
Mike, I really appreciate that. And what I'm finding is that when we're face to face, I rarely have students come to office hours. I mean, it's not 10%, that's for sure. But they are very willing to meet me in Zoom office hours. And I don't think they're lazy, but I think it's just so darn convenient to pop onto Zoom when they're working in P6 or whatever we're doing and do that. And even though it's way time consuming for me to do those initial engagement assignments, I'd do that again, and I'd also do it in Zoom again, just in the same way. I don't want to waste all the students' time, but I'm definitely willing to spend that time.
I agree. Yeah, good ideas.
Sam, may I jump in?
Oh, please. Yep, absolutely.
This is John Tingerthal. I'm at Northern Arizona University in Flagstaff. And I want to jump back to the first topic, which was technology and software. And a couple things I observed was that, we know there's almost too many options out there. There's so many different things you can use to engage students with in terms of, anything from a poll everywhere to doing student response to jumping online to Google Docs and things like that. And the one thing I noticed is the students got a little, they got a little overwhelmed because we're all using different things across the curriculum. And so one thing that we talked about internally at within our program is trying to all kind of use similar things so that the students aren't always having to create a new login and create learn how to use a new platform. So it was really that balance between trying to find something new. And I've used a lot of them in my classes versus overwhelming the students with just another new platform. We had the big debate here whether to use we use BB Learn. So there's a native platform with inside called Collaborate, Microsoft Teams, and Zoom to deliver our classes. And we stuck with a couple of them, but what we did find is industry seems to be using Microsoft Teams a lot. And for certain classes that were more industry related, we found Teams was kind of a nice way to bring people in from the industry. I'd be curious to hear what platforms and pros and cons people have found with the different interactive platforms. And I'm talking about doing synchronous teaching.
Jeff, I see that you left a message relevant to John's points in the chat box. Would you like to expand on that?
Sure. Excuse me. We realized, so when we all went online very suddenly in the spring, there was a lot of experimentation, which let us have some really awesome lessons learned. And one of them was exactly what John is saying: common, uniform platform. And for us, we did the evaluation, decided Teams was the one for us. No better or worse than anything else. The one thing that we found a detriment to Teams versus Zoom is the functionality on the breakout rooms. And if I had to make the decision again, knowing how often I use those breakout rooms, I would have gone to Zoom. Now, Teams is promising breakout rooms in October, then November, now December. So hopefully that problem gets fixed before the next semester. But in the meantime, it's probably the single biggest weakness of Teams.
Interesting. I think I did see breakout rooms actually showed up on one of my computers in Teams. And we found using the channels as breakout rooms worked really well because you could actually seamlessly move among them.
Yeah, that's what I do. But the challenge is every now and then I want to automate the breakout rooms because I'm using very large classes, and Teams isn't quite there yet.
Yep.
So for my class size, it works, but I've had a guest speaker where I brought all of my classes into one room, and the breakout rooms just didn't work.
Yeah.
So that is one area where Zoom is still superior.
Hmm.
But I would actually go out on a limb and say that's the only place.
Sophia, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great, thanks. It's a new microphone, so, or is it echoing? Is pretty clear? Okay. So I see it. Jeffrey, you went like this. Is that good or bad? Oh, it's okay. Okay. So
No echo.
No echo. Thank you. Okay. Texas A&M University. So one of the classes I teach, a graduate level course in lean integrated project delivery. And just like everybody else, when everything hit, it was, I'd gone through we had gone through the course up to spring break, and then but we play simulations a lot. I mean, for those of you who teach lean, you have, the airplane game simulation, you have parade of trades with dice and Legos and stuff like this. And so now all of a sudden, how do we teach these principles and go online? So what happened was there was a appeal from another part of the world, was sent out, sort of a mass appeal to say, how are we going to, because there were universities all over the world which were dealing with the same problem, is how do you get these simulations to go online? So what we did was we started, I just sent an email and said, when can we all meet? We started meeting every single Monday from 12 noon to 1:30 Central Time. And our very first experiments were really terrible, to be perfectly honest. For about 5 weeks, they were really, 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 really bad. And also we had the problem of many people trying multiple softwares, which created problems because people would then have to enter their email address to get access to that software, which made them quite irate because they didn't want to be giving away their email for free to all these other software companies. So what we did was we finally settled on using Google Docs and just setting a link, which is a really great collaborative platform. I think I heard somebody mention that. And we made very fast progress once we moved to Google Docs, Google Slides, and yes, and breakout rooms as well. And then we were able to solve we were able to figure out how to solve the dice problem. And we grew. Now we have 27 universities. We started with about 15 people. Now we have over 85 people on this mailing list. And if anybody ever wants to join us, let me know. I'd be happy to add you to the mailing list. We now are no longer meeting every Monday. We meet the first Monday of every month. But essentially, it's people who are inventing ways to introduce lean principles through giving these aha moments through these little simulations. And we have 90 minutes, and we're given, the rule is that you have the last 15 minutes, all the participants have to be given time to give feedback, plus delta feedback, so that's win-win for both parties. But that's been a real relief for me, because I now am teaching Lean 100% online next spring, and now I have this huge bulk of online simulations that have been developed by people from all over the world, excuse me, and they just, the one rule is we say that to put their name on the slide so we can always credit them. But anyway, it's turned out really nicely. So, but I would concur with both comments about limiting the software, and then also the Zoom breakout rooms have been just almost like a miracle. I mean, the students seem to love it. And then just lastly, in my Lean classes, I also do, I do require attendance. And I do require, with the exception of they can only miss 2 classes or else their grade is impacted. And I did that even before we went online. And so they are required to turn on their camera to ensure that there's attendance. And then I also give participation points. So even when I was doing it live, I bought a bunch of tiddlywinks, and every time somebody contributed something, they got a tiddlywink. And it was like, or kind of like poker chips, from those of you who didn't do tiddlywinks when you were kids. But, and then they turn them in, and then I grade on a curve based on number of these tiddlywinks. And then what I did was when I went online, instead of using physical chips, I just simply kept track of the number of times people participated. But I noticed that made a big difference in terms of their alertness. And they did the reading every time we had a guest lecture. They had read all the stuff, the guest lecture, before they arrived, just because they wanted to earn their participation points. So that's it. Thanks.
All right. So actually that participation points that you just brought up, Sophia, maybe it's a nice, transition to the next topic we'd like to talk about, which is engagement. I, for one, did do that to make sure that my students are engaged to the extent possible. When you put online, videos for them or things like that, I did find a way to embed quizzes and questions within the videos, and then made that part of their grade. And I haven't done any analytics on it, but just from the observation perspective, I can see that they at least answer the questions, and they at least participate in those quizzes, and then try to get more engaged with the content and so forth. Quite honestly, and purposefully, I made those quizzes to be sort of low-hanging fruit. So they have incentive to get a good grade. They have incentive to participate and kind of watch the video and make sure that they learn it. Those quizzes weren't designed to be hard by any means. So it's more easier for them to get engaged with the content, and then learn hopefully more efficiently. So with that said, what are your experience about engagement? What kind of approaches did you all use? I mean, is there anything you want to before I guess I opened my mic, there was a great question. Hani, thank you for your question. What I did was that Clemson has this platform called Ensemble. I don't know if you guys have it as well. It's basically similar. It's basically a video or integration package. It's nothing really fancy. You can upload the videos and then post those videos on Canvas or Blackboard for them to watch. And then Ensemble did allow for adding quizzes and questions on the navigation bar, as you wish. Camtasia does that as well, but a word of caveat: if you guys use Camtasia, and if you use the item that Camtasia can do for you for quizzing, it's not working really well. So just an experience. It just gets the grading afterwards pretty messy, is what my experience was. So I had students participated, I answered every question, and then got a 0 out of it for some reason. And then I reached out to Camtasia, reached out to my IT folks at Clemson, and it turns out that that has been a long-lasting problem. I would suggest not to use Camtasia for embedding quizzes. Our platform works perfectly. Honestly, I wish I knew more, but this one really helped, worked fine.
Well, in terms of engagement, one thing that I think we need to be really careful with is just, being aware that a lot of times students couldn't connect for one reason or another. And so recording the videos, hitting record, posting them. And I would actually give attendance points for watching the lecture. Again, this is synchronous, but they could watch it later and still get the points for it. And I had a handful of students. We have a lot of very rural people out here in northern Arizona, and they really appreciated that ability to not have to be synchronous for one reason or another, and the flexibility.
Giovanni, please.
Hi, Giovanni Migliaccio, University of Washington. So in terms of engagement, I think I heard mentioning some of the tools such as Poll Everywhere. We use Poll, at least I use Poll Everywhere significantly. Something else I've done, thanks to the integration of Zoom into Canvas that UW was able to work out just before starting the spring quarter. In certain class, I try to recreate the peer learning by having breakout room in Zoom, which many of you have done. But after doing it for a few weeks, the feedback was that, in some team, I was kind of jumping into different breakout room, jumping in and out to monitor. I realized that some team, they use the breakout room positively, other they just kind of zone out. So I changed that. And what I did is that every time I was planning to have a breakout room exercise, I create a discussion board on Canvas. It was called in class discussion board. And I told every team, okay, that's what you are supposed to do when you're working in the breakout room. And the one person, the leader of the team, need to report, write a short, like mini meeting minutes or summary of what you have done, so you can share with everybody else. And if there is any question pending, you can post it in there. So that's kind of increase the participation across the board. It gave me the chance to review those questions as a way to kick off the next class. Because usually the way I was doing, I was having the class and then later in the class I have the breakout room. And so I use the question pending from the previous week to kick off the conversation the next time before I do lecture. I did my lecture. So.
Wonderful. So I know that you guys can actually read the chat box, but we just received another comment that I think is worth repeating, hopefully trigger some good conversation about, Ben Farrow's comment about how students are missing that interaction, that live person-to-person interaction, and they can learn a lot from it, right? Well, now the question, I guess, for all of us is that, to your experience, is there anything we can do to simulate some of that? Giovanni's actually gave us an experience, but I want to hear more about that. If you guys have any stories, anything that you've done that you find it effective.
Hey, Hassan, I'd like to chime in on that. I'm a convert, a true believer in the student competitions, and since student competition teams tend to be a smaller group, that's a great outlet during these times to get the students that interaction. We essentially just need to somehow get more student competition teams so that more and more of our students can have that interaction. But I've seen that as being a real bridge, especially during this last semester for our students, to get that interaction.
Um, um, okay, and let me also, I guess, make a comment which could help us transition to another topic, is behind the curtain type collaboration, for lack of a better term, that students do. Do you find those collaborations useful? Is there a line that you guys think between collaboration and dishonesty or things like that? Is there something that we'd like to kind of know? Is there a story you want to share about that? Because that's a one that I'm particularly interested in, and it's one of our topics, evaluations. So let's transition to that one. Oh, and by the way, I saw Zophia's hand being up on Zoom. I think it was for the last conversation. But if that's new, please go ahead.
Thanks. It was for the last one, but I could also add to this. I'm sure I'm not the only person who does this, but in terms of teams, the concern about helping or not, some people not pulling their weight. So in my class, they get not only a team grade, but also each individual grades everybody else on the team. They're actually not even allowed to give equal percentages. And the reason I do that is because there's always that concern, even though in reality there might be this kind of feeling like, well, we all pulled our own weight, but I mean, I think that it's the temptation is that people feel very nervous about downgrading a particular student. However, if it becomes clear that everybody on the team anonymously downgraded somebody substantially, I'll let them know in advance that that will drop their grade by a letter grade for that particular assignment. And it seems to work out pretty well. I actually also include, they have to say exactly what that other person did. So it's not just the percentage, they have to exactly specify what they did. And I can clearly see if there's alignment between team members as far as that goes. And it's only happened a couple times that somebody has very consistently been downgraded by all team members. And then I do meet with them individually and I talk to them about why they think that the other team members downgraded them. And one guy was actually very clueless. I mean, he never showed up to any of the Zoom meetings of the other team members. So he couldn't understand why they downgraded them, which I found kind of amazing. But anyway, I gave him a chance to make up the grade. I said, I have an extra assignment for you. And you're going to have to really perform very well if you want to actually get the same grade as the rest of the team. And because I wanted him to ultimately have to learn the lesson that it does matter if you are not pulling your weight for the rest of the team. I'm not sure if that was your actual question, but anyway, that was.
Yeah, thank you. So let's kind of change topic and dovetail on what the comment that was just discussed, evaluation, right? Do you guys have tests? Do you have exams? Like traditional exams? David, please.
Let me start with last semester. And I think there's a culture, a very good culture in construction management across the country about collaborating. Students, we encourage collaboration. We like them to work together. They're going to do it when they graduate. That part's a good thing. We all know they can't do that during assessment because our accreditation says they can't do it. But so last semester in the spring, I used a proctor that was offered to us. It's a third party. And what it does is it records the voice, the picture, the keystrokes, the what's on their computer. Well, if I have 60 students, that means if I'm going to actually check them, I got to go back and look at long recordings. So I thought that was ridiculous. And it was actually students this semester that recommended, they said, hey, just tell us to make us turn on our camera and then you can watch. And that's been effective so far. They may be beaten the system, but I think generally it seems to be working. And the next thing is that I do that both for the multiple choice true false type of test, but also for more experiential tests where maybe I have them do forward or backward passes, or just different things associated with scheduling. And I'll do that in the same way. The one thing I am doing is providing a little more time. So I do the experiential part of the test during the lecture lab. And then when it's just the lecture, I'll have them do the true false multiple choice. And that's been pretty effective.
Oh, Jeff, please.
Yeah, we tried the Proctor system. We use lockdown browser, so it was monitor. And while it does work, the drawbacks were too many to count. Little things like the students completely lose the ability to ask questions. And I don't know about you, but when I write a test question, I think it's perfectly clear, and they find all the loopholes. So I'm actually giving mine less time, going open book, and to make time an enemy so that they can't effectively reach out to the internet and learn the topic. And my actual goal, it's not going to happen this year. I'm getting rid of my final exam. It doesn't serve a good purpose. And I teach the construction management class, how to plan a project. And I don't find the final exam has any real value. And I've come up with other ways of assessing that achieve my goals and meet accreditation too, which is kind of a bonus. But yeah, the Proctor stuff, I think we should go the other way.
John, please.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on what Jeff was saying there. It's given me the opportunity to kind of rethink the assessments, and there's a lot of ways like that to kind of make them, I don't want to say cheat proof, but making them open book and giving them, a certain amount of time where they know they can't just not study, but it gives them something to go on. I've got, I teach an elective on collaborative project delivery and IPD and lean, and they do an essay for a final, and I only have 30 students in there, so I can grade essays pretty well. And that's really helped me because really I actually give them the final exam on day one. I just say the first day of class, the final exam's pass fail. It's a mastery level, going to a mastery level grading instead of a point grading. And I give it to them the first day of class and say, here's what you have. And you just have to turn this in by the end. And when you're ready to start working on it, work on it. Now, they never look at it until the last week, but it's there. So it kind of takes some of it takes away kind of some of the pressure on it. And to be honest, they do really well on it. And the exam on that is the 5 learning outcomes for the class, just reworded a little bit. And they just have to show they met the 5 learning outcomes. And so it's given me an opportunity to kind of rethink the way I give exams. I want to make one point about the video. We've had some debates here about the video, and some people have voiced concern about privacy issues, and asking someone to turn on their video and whether that can be a concern. Now, there are lots of ways where people can shroud that a little bit, but that's something just to be thought about. And the other thing is just bandwidth. I mean, if someone's taking an online test and their camera and everything's on, that can cause some issues.
Great points. And again, just to reiterate some of the points, interesting points that are made in the chat box about the privacy issue, and some of the schools that actually do not have limitations on the faculty if they can ask students to turn on their cameras or not. Honestly, I do ask my students to turn their cameras on during a synchronous class. I don't have a test. Everything is a project, basically. And I guess I'm one of the lucky ones. I teach estimating, so it's meaningful to have a project. So I have given the students a project, and then the project has milestones. And as we proceed and learn about different divisions and doing quantity takeoff and estimating, their milestones actually kind of serve the purpose of having a test. So that works out pretty well for me. But when I ask my students to turn their cameras off on, they're reluctant. They don't want to do it. They kind of feel there's a um, privacy issue. Although I don't know, if they come to class, you can see their face, and there's no privacy issue then. But why can't they think that an online class is really nothing but a class for which you have to be prepared, and you have to be in good shape, and you have to be sitting in front of a camera? I don't know if you guys want to share any comments, experience, or anything that's useful to all of us.
Elson, the way the issues of camera privacy has been brought forward here is more related to the background, especially in spring. In our case, we are on a quarter system, so we pretty much started the whole term with COVID because we went in lockdown just a week before. It was very difficult for students or for everyone to be able to be in class, especially if they were living maybe in a dorm, sharing a room with someone else who also need to be in class. So there were a little bit of issues of privacy for those that decide to go back with the family for the background. And the other issues was how to keep it quiet, especially if we keep the microphone on. And so I know that different faculty, I would say that in general, smaller class, if we have smaller session, they try to really incentivize to keep camera on and so on, because usually the classes are designed with smaller section, they are designed for more interaction between the instructor and the student. Larger lecture, we've been much more lenient in enforcing and asking. Usually we encourage everyone to turn on the camera, but we leave it to them. Actually, we need to put it in the syllabus, some information about that, about the privacy. The university has asked us to do that. So I would say, and I agree about the bandwidth. I agree on the fact of the connection, because students, they connected, they suddenly drop because of issues. And sometimes if you keep the video on, it really create a problem. And once you turn off the video, actually, at least they can hear the rest of the lecture. So.
This is Rodolfo from Colorado State University. I just want to echo those comments from Tyra. Besides the bandwidth issues, privacy issues, and equity issues. Not all the students live in the same situations, and you are creating extra pressure if you are asking them to have their cameras on. Yes, they are coming to the classroom face to face, that's okay, but when they have their cameras on at home, is a little bit different. You don't have the same style of living, so that can create extra pressure in some of our students. In our case, we have a lot of first generation students, Pell Grant students, so we are mindful about what we can ask to our students. So just keep that in mind. And there has been a lot of publications about equity, inclusion, and how proctoring. And I really like the idea of some of the other faculty members rethinking about assessment. There is so many ways to assess the student knowledge besides just asking a final test. There is group discussions, group projects that probably are better fit than just having a final test. That's just my thought. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Tara.
Can I jump in? I definitely agree with you, Rodolfo. I think that's a great point. I will put in the chat section. There's a great Teaching for Diversity Cornell edX course that I took, and I'll put it in here because it's just really good about really rethinking how we can make sure we're meeting everybody's needs. but I work at Milwaukee School of Engineering. I work in faculty development. And one of the things that we've been talking about is how to, people were really in that rush in the spring to transfer face-to-face online. And so people were really saying, okay, what is necessary? What can I cut? And I still feel like we're in that place of like, okay, less is more. How can we go deeper? What can we cut in terms of content that maybe we don't absolutely have to have? The other thing that we were looking at is that piece that Rodolfo just mentioned, was rethinking assessment. So in the online setting, the research that I've been reading is saying, do more things weekly. Break down the midterm and the final exam into smaller components and pass that out over the semester, because these super high stakes exams in an online environment just create a lot of difficulty for our students. I mean, we are all going through a lot right now, and it doesn't appear to be ending anytime soon. So I'm just thinking, again, from that student perspective. So just wanted to share that out in terms of rethinking assessment. I think it's a great opportunity for that right now.
Wonderful. And Tara, did you say that you did put that link?
No,
in?
I'll do that right now. I'll do that right now. Yep.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. Great comments.
One thing that WSU has done because of the technology problems that students might face is, and I'm not really involved with it because we have a different department taking care of that, but they will send out loaners, ship loaner computers to students. And they'll also set up some hot spots. I'm not exactly sure how they're doing this because a lot of our students are across the state, but they are trying to manage that effectively. The one thing is that the loaner computers won't run P6, so that doesn't help my students in scheduling. But what we're finding is the construction companies are stepping up to the plate and getting those kids a laptop that's powerful enough to run P6. So thank goodness for the industry support we all get.
Giovanni, please.
I would like to raise and to see a topic to see if there was your thought. One of the things we learned early during the spring quarter, at the end of spring quarter, I did try to reach out to students to get feedback on how did we do during the quarter, and understanding what's work, what's didn't work in terms of online, because I need to plan for the new academic year. So one of the feedback I found is that really it's almost kind of like a connection between the issues of scheduling class, and especially the time between class, and the nature of the delivery, how much is synchronous versus how much is asynchronous. Normally we do class face to face and they are synchronous, right? So we do all the work synchronously. And I don't know in your institution, but in UW, getting a classroom is difficult because it's a very large university. So all the classes, they are 10 minutes away from each other because we need to schedule class on the block. And so the problem is that student told me 10 minutes is break between the face-to-face class is okay, because I have 10 minutes to work from one class to the other. I can kind of like zone out and then zone in again in the new topic, and I can refresh my mind. But on Zoom, 10 minutes is not enough to Zoom burnout is not enough to kind of recover. So what we try to do it, again, I try to play when I was planning with fall, submitting the schedule online. Once we learn that we were gonna submitting the schedule, assuming that we're gonna go face to face. Then we learn 2 months in advance that we're gonna go online. So trying to see where I could move a space class with at least half an hour between class, and where I couldn't do it, I work with the instructor to reduce the synchronous portion, so the contact hour, and to expand the asynchronous portion, so we can guarantee those half an hour break at least between classes. I don't know how you solve the problem. This is the way we're trying to do it here. So it would be interesting to learn how you deal with the Zoom burnout, time scheduling, and if you're using async versus sync versus async as a way to buffer out.
Zofia, please.
Hi. Yeah, so I just wanted to share a few kind of alternative viewpoints in terms of the this idea of I understand the equity concern. One thing I do know that most people do have access to virtual backgrounds. Most of our students do, so that would eliminate that issue. The other thing is of course the comment was made about if they are in a classroom, everybody actually has to sit there and be there as part of the lecture and contribute and participate. One of the things that I think is difficult for an instructor is to feel that they don't know if they're actually teaching to anybody who's really out there. And that's very exhausting if you don't actually see their faces. A colleague of mine at the beginning was so worried about the equity issue, everybody just turned off their videos, and she said it was a miserable, very miserable semester. And then finally, she just asked them to turn on their videos and use a virtual background if they felt uncomfortable showing the background, and she did. And she said it just made it she was more energized. It was really a pleasure. If it's a graduate class, I basically let the students know in advance. I put in the syllabus and I just say, if you don't want to participate in that way, this is not the course for you. And the other question then, if it's an undergraduate class and it is required, maybe the question to ask is how can we ensure that we as instructors know that people are still there and that they haven't just walked away from their computer or just, gone back to sleep. And so one way maybe to do it is if you still feel uncomfortable asking them to turn on their video is to say, I am randomly, at various points during the lecture going to be either administering these little poll everywhere quizzes, and that will be one indicator that this person's still with you, or maybe going to randomly ask, do a Socratic method where you call on people. But I think there needs to be some incentive from the student's perspective to actually sit there in front of a laptop, because from their perspective, if it's just simply a straight lecture and they could just, turn off and lie in bed, I mean, I can't imagine why they would want to, why would they want to stay engaged and listen? So that would be the one thing is I think it really does affect the instructor and their energy quite a lot. And anyway, that's what I wanted to share about that.
No, I would agree. And, it's actually your comment, Zofia, and Giovanni's has helped me really to transition to the next topic that we have: synchronous, asynchronous, live, Zoom, a lot of buzzwords, a lot of different terminologies, a lot of different pedagogies and so forth. What's the best for you? And I'd like to ask you guys, if you don't mind, be specific about the course you teach and what works better or best in the context of the course that you're teaching, because I think it's actually a great function. And depending on the type of course that we teach, one option or one choice can be better than the others. And I'll let you guys open up your mics and let us know your opinion. But one interesting / funny comment that I wanted to leave is that I do the polls for attendance thing via Zoom, that every now and then you ask them, are you there? And then they the least they can do is to say yes or participate. And the funny thing is that which I made a joke, is that 4 students every time say no, right? So the question is, are you there? Like 90% say yes and 10% or 8% say no. And I'm like, well, it doesn't make sense, because if you're not there, then who is saying no? Is it, but other than that, what do you think in the context of the course you're teaching? What do you think works best? Synchronous, asynchronous, a combination perhaps, experience on that. Or hybrid, actually. Thank you, John. Hybrid. I kind of dislike that, but absolutely.
Well, this is John here. I'd be happy to share a little bit about, we've been required to do hybrid. So basically come into the classroom, keep the number of students in the classroom below some sort of, distancing size, and then beam the rest out to everyone via camera. And it's really tough. We started out with 2 weeks fully online, and then to transition into the classroom where I have 60 students online and 10 in the room. It's difficult. I can engage with those 10 and I forget I've got 60 students. So I was just curious if anyone else is grappling with that issue.
I for one, John, I wanna chime in. We were asked to do hybrid, and I resisted. I said I wouldn't do it, honestly, and because I didn't believe in it. I think it won't work. I have absolutely 100% agree with what you said. It's, when some of them are there, you get engaged with them, and you almost forget the rest. There's a lot of logistics issues going with it, and all of them, at least in my opinion, unnecessary. It doesn't add value, at least in my understanding, and that's why I did resist, and I said I wouldn't do it. If you want to do a traditional class, I'm more than happy. Give me a class, I'm more than happy to get in there and accept the risk. But other than that, what I do is a combination. I post videos, but we hold one session, like weekly sessions of Synchronous, to go over material. I'll probably bring in an example, an in-class exercise, and get them engaged with that exercise. It's estimating again, so it kind of works out that way. It's a problem, set of drawings, which actually get together, try to solve it. I make sure that I poke him every once in a while and ask questions. They don't have to turn the cameras on, but I may ask questions and get him engaged with the tone of class to the extent I can.
This is Anthony Purdue from Boise State. I'm also teaching a hybrid estimating class, and it's just brutal. It is, you're teaching 3 classes at the same time, pretty much.
Right.
I also am teaching a synchronous MEP class, and as far as teaching, it's much easier to do the synchronous, Zoom teaching online. However, with with the hybrid estimating course, I do a asynchronous video for them on one day, and then they come in the other day in person in the computer lab, and I've set the assignment up in the video, and the day that we're face to face, we're working on the assignment together, and they have the opportunity to ask the questions. And really, I'm not lecturing much, maybe a little bit, but just like anything, that's the opportunity that they get. Well, they have to work on it with me in the classroom. So I do still feel like that's a better method for teaching estimating, because it's forcing them to work in front of me. But as far as social distancing, it's tough, because I've got to look at their computer, and I'm trying to stay back, and but it is a lot more work. It's double, triple the load. And I tell them, I'm not going to Zoom in for the face-to-face. If you don't show up, you just, sorry.
When earlier in the fall semester, when WSU really wanted to either be face-to-face or do some sort of hybrid, probably most of the universities are really trying hard to justify the fees and everything else. I understand that, but it was impossible for us, specifically for me, because of the size of the classes, too big of classes. So I had already decided before WSU said we're 100% online, to be online. The one thing that WSU requires is that we have to record it so students can watch it another time. It's supposed to be synchronous, and students, faculty will get in, I don't know, I'll say trouble if they're not at least 50% of the time synchronous. But what I'm finding is some students are choosing to work for the construction companies. Their internship basically continued while they're trying to go to school. And some of those students can't do that. They're not really, they're not keeping up with the schoolwork, which is tough. I'm trying to work with them, but it's a tough row for them because it's just a lot of work. But that's the only really problem I have.
One other thing that I've done with my class, which has been a pain in the butt, is I've had Zoom office hours in the evening, like 8 to 9 o'clock, which my wife will not recommend, but it gives them an opportunity to jump on and share their screen with me, and I can share it at home, and it gives them an opportunity. A lot of our students work during the day, so having office hours late in the evening gives those that are not able to during the day come in at night.
Anthony, speaking of sharing the screens, I found that the second half of the scheduling course, we start getting into using P6. The first half is more theoretical, forward, backward pass, all that stuff. But when they're having trouble, that's best on an individual basis. And in Zoom, they can share their screen. We can go in a breakout room, share their screen. I share mine. We're going back and forth. I'm troubleshooting their P6. And it's not only been extremely effective, but oh man, have I learned a ton about P6. I used it before, but I'm getting pretty good at it now. So, so I think even though we require, construction management program requires students to have their own laptops, and it's specifically supposed to be a PC, it's not enforced. So if they have a MacBook of some type, that's a bit of a problem once in a while if it's not partitioned off properly to get Windows on the other side, and therefore P6. So I might have my labs all online when we're doing that type of scheduling next year, whenever we're face to face, I should say, just because that's been so effective. And I agree with Anthony about the office hours. I'm a lot more available. By the way, my research agenda is toast. I'm spending so much time teaching that there's no way I can do any extra research.
Yeah, that's real. That's real. I agree. And I'm kind of hoping that, you know what, we've accomplished at least this fall semester in Clemson. We can hopefully use that again and again for the semesters to come in some capacity, so it kind of pays off. But this semester has been a heck of a busy semester for me. Um, yeah, it's about time, guys. I'd like to and ask John, please. I'm actually a part of it, but I know that he knows 10 times better than I do about the construction exchange expertise program that we have here in the educational committee. And some of the stuff that we've been doing as a result of this online transition, hopefully will put us in a better position to share our thoughts, our assignments, our approaches, things of the like with each other. And hopefully, as a result, everyone's skills and work and experience gets elevated. John, would you want to actually shed some light on that one?
Yeah, so I just tried to share my screen here. Hopefully you can see it. It's just a little thing that, the Associate School of Construction has been working on this construction expertise exchange. And can you all see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Since I think we kind of came up with this idea when we were in Birmingham, so that was years, maybe 8-9 years ago, and it's kind of morphed into something, and it's a site here we all have access to. I can drop I'll drop it into the link as a link into it as well, and some of you know of it. We talk about it at a lot of our conferences here, and basically it's a place where you can contribute some content. So if you've got something that you'd like to share with other construction educators, you can submit information just by clicking on the contribute content here. you can get a list of experts who are willing to kind of help out. So if you've got ideas or you got a new class that you want to teach, and it's not coming up right there, but someone who could help you and share some of their content with you. And then we have the different content topics. And this has been, let's see, here's the experts that come up. So you have contact information for people in the different areas. With the subject topics, we've got a bunch of different topics listed here. And the idea is you can submit some content, you can come in here and find some content. And I know we've all been building a lot of new things recently that could be of use to others. I mean, it was great. I made a note of what Sophia was talking about. I wish I knew about the 85 people collaborating with lean simulations, because tomorrow is my last day in my class, and I wish I would have been part of that. So, these are places where we can share information. So I just want to leave it there. We've got a group of us that have been working on this. You can see on the side here, Evan, John, Hassan, myself, Bill. And then this is hosted, Procore actually hosts this for us on their support. This is kind of their help pages. So they do all the hosting and they do all the kind of the back end for us. So that's just something I wanted to share with you. And again, you can click on that and you can contact myself, Hassan, or anyone you see on this list here if you have more questions.
Thank you very much, John. So we're 6:07. We still have a little bit of time. And I wanted to kind of ask you guys, I guess a philosophical question, I would put it. What's the path? What do you think is the residue of this pandemic on the way we teach the semesters to come? Are we gonna continue to do some of the stuff that you've learned from this pandemic? Is any of you going to continue to teach in some capacity an online course? Do you find it a success, or do you find it something that you just had to do and you would never go back to it if you had a choice? What do you all think?
Well, I think the students who survive are learning a whole new skill set. I mean, these things that the things that they have to do. And I say that kind of tongue in cheek when I say the ones who survive, because I think we're gonna, there's some students that aren't going to, make it through some of this. But it's a collaborative skills, it's technological skills. And to be honest, I think the students have had to step up and take a little bit more responsibility for their learning.
So I will admit I have actually come to prefer doing this by Zoom. And I'll tell you one of the reasons why is that when I have a classroom of say 35 students, a lot of times I can't see the students who are way in the back. And one thing that's wonderful is everybody has a front row seat with Zoom. And the other advantage is that I'm not particularly good with names. It takes me a while to memorize everyone's name. And of course, with Zoom, everybody's name is automatically on their photograph, which makes it really easy to do the Socratic method. So, and now that these simulations, we've been able to get them online, and I use breakout rooms enormously and participation points, all that stuff. So actually the students said I got higher evaluations when I went on Zoom than when I was live. And also the other thing is that when we play these simulations, a lot of times the students in the regular classroom, they kind of sit in the same seat, always next to the same people. But with the Zoom breakout rooms, because we can press the auto scramble so they end up in different breakout rooms, they've gotten to know a lot more people in their class than when they were doing it physically. So I actually have to say I really, really love this Zoom format. It's working out really well for this particular class.
This is Nate Berry here in Omaha. I guess I would say, I think from a teaching development standpoint as a group, this has really forced us to use the technology in a way that I think we're going to keep. So when this is all over, everybody's excited to get back on campus and in the classroom. There's going to be portions, more project-based learning, more game interaction, more small group stuff that's going to stick with us. So if there is a silver lining, I think as a group, we're going to be better educators probably.
Agreed.
Hey, this is Salman from Auburn University. A couple of things which I would like to share. In fact, I teach a lot of structures classes, and I found that students' knowledge retention and understanding of the subject matter through Zoom classes is way much improved, because the sessions are recorded and they can always go back and watch the recordings. And during the summer, I created a lot of small video tutorials. For example, if they ask me questions, instead of sending them replies, now I'm creating videos. So it has created a lot of good knowledge base for me, which I can share in the future. And secondly, it also makes us easy to teach while we are on travel for conferences or other businesses. So we don't need to miss the classes. We can either deliver live, because now students are aware about Zoom and other online tools, or we can also use recorded lectures. So I think there are a lot of benefits which I found through online teaching as well, and it can help us to improve our teaching practices in the future.
Really, thanks for sharing that. I completely agree with you. We're doing the same with our robotics class, same exact thing. And it allows them to just re-go over it over, I mean, in their own time, if they struggle with the algorithms and things, so.
Great.
Fantastic. I'd like to actually say something that I learned from a colleague here, Mr. Bob Coffey, who is with us. And this is because his research is on online education for construction, and he's with us at Clemson. And this is for before COVID that Bob told me that, you know, normally you have a class as far as the distribution. A third of your class are really there to learn. They're A-type students. They want to learn and so forth. And they will learn whether you do online or in class, right? And then you have a bottom third. Oh, well, I make these third numbers up, obviously, but well, give or take, that they don't want to learn. They're actually there to spend some time to take a class. They're not really interested. They probably they've come a wrong way and so forth, either in class or online. They're probably not going to be very successful. And it remains you with a third in the middle. And you know, the more we can do to engage them in this virtual environment and then convince them that this is a good thing and they can succeed and they don't have to go to class, I think the more, at least for myself, I would count that as a success for me personally, to see that more and more of that third in between group that I can actually grasp attention and have him come to class or watch videos or learn and so forth. I did not. I went into this thing cynical, but I'm coming out of it actually impressed. I shall say. I mean, there is a lot of potential for online learning, online teaching, and there's a lot of good things that we can do that doesn't necessarily have. I'm definitely up for in-class traditional classes, no question about that. But when I think about it in my own time, I kind of feel like this online education thing isn't that bad after all. So there's a lot of positive things and positive tones in it, and hopefully, you know, as a group, all of us together with these shared experience, we can have a you know, better understanding, better procedure and plans for future, and then take advantage of it. Now, I guess with that said, I want to thank you all. Thank you for sharing your time, sharing your experience. It was really wonderful for me to learn from you all. It was a good session for me. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm a little busy, but I have made a promise to myself to go back at this session. That's why I recorded it in the first place, and then document your experiences, the anecdotes, the best practices, and so forth, and kind of make it available to the community as a whole. So it probably will take some time for me to do it, but I'll eventually do it. If you don't have any further business, it was great to see you and hope to see you again soon. Thanks.